Hello and welcome back to Radiant Dawn 0% Growths. We're on Chapter 2.2. We get access to the base again, although in a very limited capacity. And one thing we do get to check out is our MVPs for the last couple chapters that we haven't been able to see yet. So 1E Black Knight, 2P Marsha, and 2-1 Nephany. The only one that really surprised me at all there was the Black Knight, just because Nyla, I think, does more work in 1E, but Black Knight does, of course, kill all those enemies at the top of the map, so that's probably enough to put him over at the top. Anyway, we don't get to visit the shop, we don't get to mess with skills, we have no supports to do, so we can just move on. There are new units to talk about, but I'm going to do that after I check on some initial condition stuff, somewhat similar to the last map, except there's... Okay, yeah, I think we're good here. Yeah, there's basically how much HP and defense this guy has is like the one thing that can mess up this clear. Like, most of the other stuff is not very sensitive to RNG stuff, but this guy's stats are. And the reason for that is just because it's such a choke point. Anyway, so let's zoom back out from that a little bit first, though, and talk about the chapter and our new units. So we've got three new units, Lucia, Laith, and Mordecai. This chapter is an Arrive map in which Lucia has to get to this square right here. There's a boss standing on it, who's a wind mage, or maybe sage, forget which. And then a couple of armor knights blocking the way over there. And then there's just, obviously a bunch more enemies on the map. There are these torches that you can light to clear some of the fog, though that, I mean, when you're playing the map a bunch of times in a row as I am, that turns out to be not super relevant. But I do think it's a really nice touch for more difficult playthroughs. And I really prefer this style of Fog of War in general to like what you see in 1.9, for example. There's a discipline scroll down here as a hidden item. We're not going to be going for that because it's too far out of the way. Our plan is just to basically go up here and then across and just straight to the Arrive tile. In terms of our new units, so starting with Lucia, she is pretty similar to Zahark. A little bit better. She's got significantly more speed than him. I want to say Zahark has 23 speed, she's got 27. But the difference between 23 and 27 speed right now is not really remarkable. And then she disappears until part 4, at which point you don't even know if she's really doubling at that point. Certainly she's not dealing damage because her strength is not good. Speaking of her strength, I want to say that is the same as Zahark's. I know Stoth starts with 20 and Zahark's is a little bit lower. Of course, Zahark has swords, so he's doing a little bit more damage than Stoth, but I remember that being about the comparison. She does have this silver sword, which helps a little bit relative to, having just like an iron or a steel sword. On the other hand, we have no forges right now, so I mean, we'd actually be better off with like a forged steel sword that would do a little bit more damage than the silver sword. Defensively, also similar to Zahark, similar defense and res values, a little bit more HP. I want to say Zahark is like 32, so she's a little bit more durable. She's very dodgy, and that's more so than he is, I would say. So, like, if you're trying to get, like, a gauge, well, Zahark is, like, pretty good, in late part 1. We're further into the game. She's a little bit better, at least in terms of durability, if not damage output. Though she also doesn't have access to the skills that he does. Like, she's got parity, which is fine. But, well, I say it's fine. It's relevant in the late game. It's not relevant now, and she doesn't really take advantage of it. But there is a point in the game where parity is a relevant skill. But we're a long ways away from that. But she doesn't have Adept, and we don't have the ability to give her, Wrath or Cancel or any of the other cool skills that you can give Zahark in part 1. So she's not gonna she's not actually going to kill enemies, maybe even as often as he does, in some cases. But, I mean, she does still have the crit plus 10. Certainly for this chapter, she's the best unit that we have, but she's not going to, like, just one-round everything. And then, yeah, like I said, she disappears until part 4 after this, so she's basically got this one good chapter, and then she's trash after that. Is there anything else I need to say about her? I don't think so. So moving on to our 2 new Laguz units, Lathe and Mordecai. If you watched my Path of Radiance playthrough, or are familiar with Path of Radiance but aren't familiar with Radiant Dawn, you might be very disappointed in Lathe and Mordecai. So, they have like a similar stat distribution to what they have in Path of Radiance, where Lathe is faster and Mordecai is bulkier and hits harder. But the problem is that their stats are just like lower across the board relative to the enemies, with the exception, I guess, of like Mordecai's defense. Lathe has 24 speed, which is good enough to double right now. Though it doesn't stay good enough to double for that long. And the real problem is that her attack value is just not good. So she's got 18 strength transformed, plus an 8 might claw is 26 attack. For comparison, Neolucci has 27, because he's got 10 strength and a 7 might beak. We saw, Lucia has 30 with the silver sword. Grom has 30 with a steel axe, or like 27 with an iron axe. I mean, she's gonna double and Brom isn't, but like, these are all characters that like don't deal that much damage. And for a Laguz to deal that like kind of low damage is a real problem, because they can't do it at 2 range. They have to deal with the transformation gauge. They have to take turns, player phases off to like restore their transformation gauge. And what's worse than that for Lathe is that she's a cat, and the cat gauge is quite bad in this game. And I don't think I've really gotten into this discussion, so I guess I might as well have it now. But basically, the way that the gauges work in Radiant Dawn is that rather than all filling at the same rate like they do in Path of Radiance, they fill at different rates and deplete at different rates based on your class. Cats have their gauges fill the fastest and also deplete the fastest. And that doesn't necessarily sound like a bad thing at first glance, because having your gauge fill up the fastest does mean that you're going to get ready for combat the fastest. The problem is, there's 2 problems. Number 1, having your gauge fill faster is only relevant to the extent that it decreases the number of turns. So like, the gauge has 30 points. If your gauge fills, at let's say that your gauge filled at like 8 points a turn, right? Then it's going to take you 4 turns to fill the gauge. If you go to 9 points, it's still going to take you 4 turns. Then if you go to 10, it's 3 turns. So going from 8 to 10 is relevant, but going from 8 to 9 is not relevant. That kind of thing. So you only having it fill faster is only relevant to the extent that it decreases the number of turns. But whereas depleting it faster, because you also like lose points for combat, adds up a lot faster, because you're like, every time you're fighting something, and that's what you want to be doing, you're losing gauge faster if your gauge depletes faster. Moreover, it's typically the case in Radiant Dawn that you're going to use a Levy Grass or a Laguz Stone to charge up your gauge. And because you're doing that anyway, having your gauge fill faster becomes even less relevant than what I said earlier. Because, like, for instance, if you're filling it up to 15 with a Levy Grass, now you've only got 15 left to fill it. Like, now, like, the difference, there is, like, there's even fewer intervals in which you decrease the number of turns until you can transform. So yeah, the cat gauge is really bad. Lathe's damage output is bad. She can't counterattack at 2 range, of course, all that stuff. She's not terrible in this chapter, but her utility is really quite limited. Mordecai, he's got 18 transform speed, so he's not really doubling things, which is a significant problem. He does have a lot of strength, so he's got 28 strength transformed, plus the 10 might fang is 38 damage, so he does hit hard, but the fact that he just doesn't double means he's still not one-rounding things. He is very durable. 32 transform defense is actually kind of insane. But being durable is not that valuable if you're not actually like killing things in retaliation. So, I mean, again, they're not terrible units, but they have some serious limitations. And, like, I would say Neolucci is more useful in this chapter because he's faster than both of them. He deals more damage than Lathe. He's got Canto and Flight. Yeah. So, anyway, I think we can actually get on with this now. So, we're gonna try to make our way up here, starting with having Lucia hit that guy, and then you may recall, or may not, because I didn't, that I gave Har's weapons to Neolucci at the end of 2P. And so we've got a javelin for Nephany, which is great because we didn't get the javelin from the last chapter. So we're going to have Braum come up here and trade for the axes, which is not super relevant. We just need to get him out of the way. Unfortunately, he cannot use this short axe because he doesn't have high enough weapon level, which is pretty pathetic, but oh well. And then we're going to have Neolucci come over here, trade Nephany the javelin, and then he's going to use a Lagustun. We can afford to be more liberal with these in general in Radiant Dawn than in Path of Radiance, just because they're not so limited. In particular, like, there's lots of Olivigrass, and then, like, you know, late in the game you get, like, the Laguz gems and the Royals and stuff, so there's not nearly as much of, like, a limitation on using Laguz gems. Anyway, or sorry, Laguz stones. So now that Nephany has a javelin, we can come over and finish this guy off with her, which opens the way for us to advance with Lucia, which we're going to do. Chanting with Leanne. And actually, yeah, I do want to check this. So let's see. Yeah, I don't want her to get poisoned. If I can help it. So we're gonna have Neolucci weaken this guy, and then he's gonna drop back to here, and then we're gonna have Sia finish him off. And then we're going to have Lathe come up here, trade Wind Edge to Lucia. Not that it really matters, but this will set Lathe up to get attacked by an archer who will then fill up her gauge. And then we're going to have Mordecai also use Lagustone. And there's a bunch of enemies that we can now see right there who Mordecai and Braum are going to lure away from the path that we want to go through at the top, as well as just keeping them from, like, circling around and attacking Leanne or some such. Mordecai did double right there, but that's going to be the only time we see that. Oh, didn't even get hit. Amazing. She usually gets hit. Okay, so let's check on... Oh, he does actually one round. I'm not sure how relevant that actually is, though. The main... So normally I would take this guy out with Lucia. I mean, the advantage of not attacking with Neolucci is that I don't deplete his gauge, though that shouldn't be an issue anyway. Let's see. Yeah, I think I would still prefer to attack with Lucia. We'll do that. Then we get a torch. Which, now that... Oh, that doesn't quite work, does it? Okay, that's fine. So we'll just... I'm gonna trade for it and use it. Okay, so something I don't quite understand. 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, something I don't quite understand is that I have done this before, use the torch here, and been able to see. There's an armor knight right here. I have been able to see him before, now I can't. It doesn't really matter, because we can move Lathe up and use her to get vision, but it's just a little odd. Okay, so is there anything useful we can do with Neolucci's Canto? I guess we'll light the torch here. Short answer is basically no, there is not. Alright, and then... I think we can avoid putting anybody in this guy's range. Put Leif here. Well... So we kind of have two options here. They should both work. But basically, one is to have Neolucci set up a kill here for Lucia on this guy so that there's a bunch of enemies in here. The more of them that can come in and die in enemy phase, the better. But then there's also this archer here who we cannot finish off because we don't double. Mordecai almost one-shots him, but he doesn't. And we can't get to him with both Mordecai and Braum. So, this guy, he won't kill Neolucci if he shoots him, but I don't really want to have to deal with him next turn either, although it's possible that Braum would just be able to finish him off. Let's see, if Braum were to attack him this turn, and then he moves 6. Braum would be able to move 6 after him. Yeah, I guess this is probably actually fine. Neolucci's not at risk of dying anyway. Alright, let's do that then. I'm gonna take this guy out with Mordecai, so we don't have any risk of getting walled off next turn. There's also a guy... Part of the reason I don't want to leave Neolucci too close to the front is there's also a guy with a bowgun who can come up and hit Neolucci for 52 damage out of his 53 HP, which is not ideal. Although it does set him up to do Wrath crit stuff, but still. Alright, we can shove Leanne 1 square forward, but we can actually smite her next turn with Mordecai. So I'm just going to move Nephany up. Oh, that guy's just going for Braum anyway. Alright, that's completely fine. Here comes the guy with the bowgun. Oh, he actually missed. The bowgun is very accurate, so that's surprising. Yes, these guys are like forced to attack at 1 range, which is great. Can kill them. Granted, we could have done that with an iron sword, so it's a little bit sad, but this silver sword is not actually super relevant. Okay, so now we should be able to... That's actually a surprisingly low hit rate. Okay, that's probably fine. Let's see, 26 and 14, that's safe. Actually, it's safe anyway, I suppose. But I don't really want Neolucci to go down to 1 hit point. Still, I think... Oh, we are gonna... Oh, right, we're gonna smite, so she's gonna be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so... Honestly, I think it still makes sense to just do this. Okay. Easy. And actually... we just do... this. We could have Braum come up and do like a shove thing next turn, but we don't need him to, so I'm just going to kill that guy so he doesn't annoy me. I think we're gonna go with see to kill this guy. And we can actually have some 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, he can't quite make that. Okay, never mind. Although we could do is shove Lucia. Make the torch there, and then Lucia is going to come up here and with this and heal, and is going to be standing in front of the Armor Knight in front of the boss. We need to get some damage on this turn. I guess using a silver sword really pumps your weapon level quickly. Okay, so now, I didn't actually talk about this yet, mostly because I forgot, but the goal of this turn is to not just arrive, but also to steal this guy's secret book. And granted, it's not super important, but we can, so we're going to. So the first thing we're going to do is finish this guy off. And then what we want to do is rescue Lucia back. I think so. We're gonna smite Heather, and she's gonna steal from this guy. But in order to set that up, basically we want to... Oh, sorry, not rescue, shove Lucia back. Glad I didn't actually do that, because that would have been incorrect. Okay, we're going to shove her back, like that, and then chant for these two. Because we need Lucia to arrive this turn. And then we want to have Neolucci attack, because he won't kill... Well, he could crit, but he can Canto out of the way. Okay. And then we're going to have Mordecai come up and smite Heather. Who's then going to come steal Secret Book. And then let's check 87. Yeah, we're gonna use Leith. So we're gonna rescue Heather, and then have Leith come up and take out the boss. before we seize, I guess we can go ahead and have Braum attack this guy. Look at that. Good job, Braum. Alright. So there you have it. That is chapter 2-2 in 4 turns. I have to say, initial condition stuff aside with that one Armor Knight's stats and whether Nephany can get the kill, this was a much more enjoyable chapter to play than 2-1. I always like the puzzle of like getting the secret book was I probably made it look easier than it actually was. Like it was pretty non-obvious to me when I first got into it, like how to do it. But I really enjoy figuring stuff like that out as part of these playthroughs. So yeah. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I will see you next time for a really fun map, Joffrey's Charge in 2-3. Until then.